Zero sanctions were imposed only once after hygiene in France and flight, and there were so many loopholes left. So I don't think that regime is isolated economically at the moment. That's why we insist that joint coordinated sanctions between European Union, UK, and the USA should be enforced in the nearest future. Economic sanctions can make a regime change their behavior, and we have to move forward. We had era of Soviet Union in our part of continent, but look, we have to move forward. There is no time to go back. We look at the future, a great future for Belarus, and we don't have to mix our two countries. Belarus is independent country that may have its own rules.
But at the moment, you'd be happy with more sanctions. You think that's the right thing to do. The EU are considering that today. You would urge them to do that.
I wouldn't be happy with more sanctions. I would be happy with change of the situation in Belarus when people are released. But I think that the only way to achieve these goals, new elections, new early elections, is make Lukashenko step away, and he way to this only with economic pressure.
Belarusian opposition leader spent Holland to the sky. 3 days ago, an American journalist, Danny Fester, was given an 11-year prison sentence for his project in Myanmar. But now he's been freed after a former US diplomat traveled to the country to speak to Myanmar's military leader. The journalist had been convicted of encouraging dissent against Myanmar's military government, which seized power in February. Our correspondent, John Kennedy, is in Nairobi.
So we believe it's now on his way home. He was actually picked up in the Myanmar capital quite a long way from where he was in jail. He must have been driven there to be greeted by the former US Governor, Bill Richardson, who made a visit to Myanmar capital. The most senior police officer in the area where Kabul is, Constable Kennedy, she has tried to reassure people of Kabul and say that there is no specific risk to the city or its people, but in the same breath she's also admitted that she's increased police presence in the streets all the time being to make sure that everyone stays safe.
To the US now, where the man behind the 1969 bank robbery in Cleveland, in Ohio, has finally been identified after one of the longest-running unsolved deaths in American history. Charlotte Gallagher asked David Lewis how the man managed to get away.
52 years after walking out of a Cleveland bank with a bag stuffed with $215,000, Ted Conrad, aka Thomas Randall, has been identified as the thief. So how did it all unfold? Well, Conrad was working as a teller at a branch of Society National Bank and not a modern employee. According to authorities, he would brag to friends how easy he thought it would be to rob the place, and he gambled and get away with it too. He was also an avid viewer of the heist movie, The Thomas Crown Affair, the 1968 film.
As well, there is also a body call for all workers to remain at home. People are buying the idea of a lockdown, but many people say that won't deal with the longer term problem, which is some of those factors that contribute to foul air on the day.
Rogini Pochinov. With most of the votes counted in Sunday's midterm elections, the conservative opposition in Argentina looks set to topple the governing center-left coalition of President Alberto Fernandez. Veronica Smith is our reporter in Buenos Aires.
There's a lot of discontent. First thing is the economy. Argentina has a 52%
power when the pandemic started. And yet they decided to impose one of the longest lockdowns in the world, actually. So you think, the handling of the economy and the pandemic by Alberto Fernandez's government has made things much worse. The third thing is also fights within the governing coalition. Fernandez and his very powerful vice president, Cristina Kirchner, came together to very successfully vote President Mauricio Macri out of power in 2019. But now that center-right coalition
Patients that these were suicide attacks?
Yes, that's what the police told us this afternoon. And recovered a suicide vest somewhere a little bit outside of the city. And the authorities have been saying since October, when we had 2 separate blasts in different locations, that these attacks are being carried out by a Ugandan rebel group called the Allied Democratic Forces, which is based in the Eastern DRC. It's been based in the Democratic Republic of Congo for over 2 decades now. But they used to be fighters in Uganda trying to overthrow the government back in the 90s and 2000s.
And the police believe that there are still more members of these domestic terror cells, as they will be referring to them?
That's what we've been hearing. The authorities have been telling us since last month that there were cells that had been sleeper cells within the country. Those cells are said to have started becoming active around August. And at the time, there was the deputy chief of police who had died, and at his burial, the police said they'd arrested a gentleman with a backpack full of explosives and pursued his colleagues later. So we've been hearing in the last few weeks that there are sleeper cells by the so-called ADF, which now claims to be affiliated to the Islamic State or IS, and these cells have been active in the last few weeks.
What more can you tell us about the ADF? Stands for Allied Democratic Forces, as you say, based in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
There were a group of militants that were in the 90s and 2000s based in the Rwenzori Mountains in that region in western Uganda. And at the time, they claimed their aim was, or their goal was, to fight and overthrow the Ugandan government. At the time, they used to attack rural areas, attack schools, kill civilians, and abduct school children. And at the time, they also staged or planted a number of explosive devices within Kampala, which killed a number of people. In fact, the president, in his last speech last month, said that during the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, the ADF had planted about 30 different devices around Kampala and killed over 120 people. So then they were fought and pushed into the Eastern DRC. And while there, over the last couple of decades, they've evolved and they claim to be affiliated to the Islamist state, the Islamic State.
Patience Atuhare joining us live from the Uganda.
The police came, we were peaceful. They came and started shooting at us.
Tens of thousands of Nigerians had taken to the streets at the Lekki toll gate area of Lagos, calling for the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, police unit to be disbanded. The report leaked on Monday identified 48 casualties after the army opened fire on the demonstrators, 11 of whom were confirmed dead, with 4 still missing. Nigeria's army has denied shooting live rounds at protesters. One of those protesting at Lekki tollgate was the DJ, artist and human rights activist Obianuju Catherine Ude, better known as DJ Switch. She was on stage when the violence started and decided to live stream the scene on her Instagram page. She joins us now from the United States. October the 20th last year. What did you witness?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I witnessed soldiers just ambushing us, it was getting dark, and then prior to their arrival, we observed some of the LCC staff, and LCC is the Lekki Concession Company. They managed the toll gate, dismantling CCTV cameras, the lights went off, and the next thing, gunshots. And when the army left, the Nigerian police came and opened fire on us as well.
You have been praised for doing that live streaming and recording what had unfolded because it became very important evidence. As you've said, the CCTV cameras were dismantled.
Well, I don't know. I'm grateful to be here and alive. I didn't think I'd make it out that day. I don't really look at it as, I appreciate people's solidarity, but I think the real heroes are the ones that you've talked about on the list, the ones that have passed away, the people that have, I think those are my heroes. Young Nigerians speaking up every day are my heroes.
Do you feel vindicated by the findings of this leaked report?
I always say the truth needs no defense. With regards to vindication, it's the truth. It's always been the truth. I've tried to share it everywhere. So I'm glad the truth is out now. Now we need accountability. Now we need people to pay for this crime.
And do you think you will see that?
Well, first of all, this is a win, this report, because this was set up, but it would just be indicative of the types of people we have in power and the actions that we need to take, which is speaking out more and calling for justice.
We're glad you've come on to News Hour to speak out. DJ Switch, Obianuju Catherine Ude, joining us live from the United States. Now, here in the UK, the former Yorkshire cricketer Azeem Rafiq has been giving evidence to a parliamentary committee about the racism he experienced during his time at the club. It's been raw and difficult for him. At one point, he broke down and the hearing took a break to give him some respite. His story has blown wide open the racism in the sport. He said he felt isolated and humiliated at times, and racism was widely accepted in the game.
There just seems to be an acceptance in the institution from the leaders, and no one ever stamped it out. To be honest, all I wanted to do is play cricket for England, and live my dream and live my family's dream.
Azeem Rafiq. Let's speak to Mihir Bose, a sports writer and author of the upcoming book, The Impossible Dream, Can We Ever Have a Non-Racial Sports World? Welcome to the programme. What did you make of the testimony?
I think it was explosive testimony, given with great feeling. He broke down several times, and what followed was in some ways even more explosive, which is that Roger Hutton, the former chairman of Yorkshire, who was chairman when the investigation into Azeem Rafiq's allegations were made, admitted that Yorkshire cricket, the biggest county in England, the most important cricket county, was institutionally racist. And even the head of the England-Wales Cricket Board, which runs the game in this country, sort of dodged around the issue and basically broadly said, on this issue, it probably is institutionally racist. So I think, in a way, as Lord Patel, the new chairman of Yorkshire, said, this could be a watershed moment. The question is, can cricket change?
And what's the answer to that, Mihir Bose? Can it change?
Well, for it to change, the running of cricket has to change. And secondly, we need more people like Azim Rafiq to come out and speak about what's going on. Because I must say, I've been a journalist for almost 50 years. I've never seen so much spoken about race on the sports pages. But this is the first time that cricketers are talking about what they have been going through. And we've known about these stories for some time. But they are willing to come out and talk about it. And if they are, and then the cricket authorities are willing to really change their structures, the way they run the game. But the cricket is still run in that sort of idyllic way, where John Major spoke about bringing back that idyllic cricket, didn't he? About bringing goodness back in life. It didn't quite work for him. So, but there's a sort of romance about cricket. And the fact is that cricket is a modern game. The way it has to be run is in a modern way, accountable way. And if the cricket authorities can be accountable, can actually admit to mistakes that are made or faults in the game, then maybe we can make progress. At the moment, they're making all the right noises, but they have to be followed by the right action.
Just briefly, Mihir, I mean, it does feel as though this young man's dreams have been utterly thwarted, and that is the case, isn't it? People are reluctant to speak out because they know that there is an enormous price that they might have to pay.
Yes, and also, the point about cricket is a team game. There are 11 people in the dressing room. You know you're being made to feel the outsider. The last thing you want to do is come out and say things which further emphasize that you're an outsider. And skin color is one of those things which immediately brand you as somebody not part of the squad, as it were. And you don't want to do anything that disturbs that.
Mihir Bose, sports writer and author of the upcoming book, The Impossible Dream, Can We Ever Have a Non-Racial Sports World? Bringing us to the end of this edition of NewsHour. Thanks for your company this past hour. I'll be back again tomorrow. Do join me then.
This is the BBC World Service. Join Grace Moon as she explores how the world of finance is changing.
Trading used to be an activity that was reserved for the rich, for people working in the world's major financial capitals. But technology is changing that.
I never actually thought that I had a problem until I kept losing too much money.
Trading Tribulation. Today at 20 GM.
Tear gas and rocks. This will be used by Alexander Lukashenko to try to present Europe as uncaring and uncompassionate.
Gas prices in Europe have surged almost 10% after the German authorities suspended the certification of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline under the Baltic Sea. The pipeline is expected to double Russian gas supplies to Europe. A former cricketer for a leading English club has said the game is riddled with racism across the country. Azim Rafiq was giving evidence to a parliamentary committee. He said racist comments by teammates at Yorkshire were dismissed as banter. Dan Rowan reports.
Azim Rafiq told MPs that racist terms were used constantly at his former club, with no one in leadership challenging them. At times, struggling to contain his emotions, he said he'd been subjected to inhuman treatment after his son was stillborn in 2017, leaving him feeling isolated and humiliated. He also recounted how, aged just 15, while at his local club, he was pinned down and had red wine poured down his throat by a player who represented Yorkshire, and that racism had cost him his career. Rafiq said the reason some of his former teammates said they couldn't recall discriminatory language showed how normal it was.
World News from the BBC. Britain's High Court has ruled that a Libyan man, an aide to the former ruler, Colonel Gaddafi, was jointly responsible for the shooting of a policewoman in London in 1984. Yvonne Fletcher was killed while policing a demonstration outside the Libyan embassy by shots fired from within the building. Saleh Ibrahim Mabrouk, who denied wrongdoing, was found guilty in a civil case. The government of the Netherlands has lodged a police complaint against one of the country's biggest providers of coronavirus tests because of suspicions that it issued fake vaccine certificates. The company, Spudtest.nl, has been banned from offering tests. The firm has denied any wrongdoing. The German city of Munich has cancelled its famous Christmas market for a second year running because of coronavirus. The market normally attracts about 3 million visitors annually. Customs officials in Hong Kong have made a breakthrough in an important national security case by seizing nearly a ton of live lobsters. Michael Bristow reports.
China banned imports of Australian lobsters last year following a political row. But smugglers appear to have come up with a clever way of continuing to satisfy Chinese desire for the delicacy. After the ban, shipments to Hong Kong, where Australian lobsters are still allowed, skyrocketed. It's what most are then sent across the border and end up on mainland tables. Last month, Hong Kong's customs chief said this illegal trade was undermining China's national security. Since then, crustaceans have been on the wanted list.
India has announced the reopening of a visa-free travel corridor with Pakistan that leads to one of the Sikh religion's holiest sites. The Kartarpur crossing will reopen on Wednesday to coincide with the anniversary of the birth of Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, who's said to have established the faith's first commune there. BBC News.
People fixing the world.
Welcome to People Fixing the World from the BBC World Service with me, Richard Kenny. This is the programme that doesn't let the world's problems get us down. We're here to find solutions. And the problem we're tackling this week is cities. But what's wrong with cities? They're meant to be smart, efficient places to live with everything we need on our doorstep. Well, the reality is often quite different. Lots of city dwellers live out in the suburbs and then travel to work in the city centre on busy roads or crowded trains. And at the weekend, many people drive to the shopping centre and maybe travel all over town for a night out. And when you stop and think about it, all that travelling around can't be good. To start with, it can't be good for the planet. Cars, especially private vehicles, are big contributors to both greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution.
60% of the world population is living in cities, but cities consume like 75% of energy, produce 75% of the pollution. So there are environmental issues.
Ton Venevan is a Dutch architect and urban planner who thinks cities need to change. I caught up with him when he was visiting London, and he told me that commuting doesn't just damage the environment, it's making us unhappy.
You see that the places like here in London is becoming really expensive to live here, which means that many people are forced to have long commutes, lose a dramatic amount of time during the day, which could otherwise be spent on the family, on friends, on leisure.
Anton also believes that the way our modern cities are laid out is bad for our mental health.
With the dominance of traffic in cities, we lost almost all public space. And that means that small children are not allowed to play in the street anymore. So they do games inside. And that means that the whole development of the brain is deteriorating, which is one issue. The other, in lots of cities, there are more and more single households, and more people suffer from depression.
And then just think for a second about how all those cars we use to get around dominate our cities.
If you consider that most cars are standing still 23.5 hours of the day, then they just take up space. And each car has 4 parking spaces. One at home, one at the job, one here, one there. It's a huge waste of space.
Well, there's a worry that all this could be getting worse as cities continue to grow. According to the UN, there'll be 2.5 billion more urban dwellers in the next 30 years. But maybe there's another way. A radical new idea has been causing quite a buzz in planning offices and town halls around the world. And it's all to do with time. In particular, cutting down on how long we spend travelling around. Let me introduce you to the 15-minute city.
The 15-minute city is an idea that everything people need from daily life, like a decent workspace, leisure opportunities, healthcare, education for kids, that you can reach that within 15 minutes walking or cycling instead of commuting. So it sets ourselves free from this pressure of the daily commute and the loss of time.
Sounds simple, doesn't it? All your daily needs just 15 minutes walk or cycle away. The idea brings together lots of different ways of making a city more livable and sustainable. But the central idea is one of proximity, making jobs and services local. It was devised by Professor Carlos Moreno.
This is the concept for promoting a radical change of our urban lifestyle. We could provide a real quality of life for having happy citizens.
We'll meet him properly later on, but for fans like Ton Venevan, it's an opportunity to rethink how we get around the city and how we can use space better.
We shouldn't forget that many cities until the 50s were more or less 15-minute cities. With not so many cars in the street, people could walk, and it's only with the coming of the private car that we lost this quality of public space. So offering alternatives for transportation by creating bicycle lanes in the city or improving public transport options, using places for cars to park, to transform them into other spaces like planting trees, that all helps to create a different use of the city.
Many cities have been trying to tackle our dependence on cars for some time, and efforts were accelerated during the COVID pandemic, when many of us were working from home and there were fewer cars around. Places as different as New York and Jakarta shut down streets to traffic and encouraged people to use bikes or walk more. And some of these measures have become the new normal. But to find a place that's really embraced the 15-minute city idea, there's only one thing to do: hop on a train to Paris.
To amenities, services, and also to have public common space, and the public space should become more for the people, and that's really the main idea behind the 15-minute city concept.
Schemes like the one in Bastille have helped Paris to reduce congestion. The mayor's office say car traffic across the city has gone down by 20% in the last 6 years. But discouraging traffic in the city centre is only part of the story. The 15-minute city is about having all our needs near to where we live. And as most people don't live in the centre, Hélène and I took a metro to a suburb where it's being put into practice. We've come across town now. We're in a neighbourhood. Tell me where we are and what sort of place is it?
So we are in the street called La Rue de la Jonquière, which is in the far north of Paris, and it's probably one of the poorest area of the 17th arrondissement of Paris.
One of the first things you need to create a 15-minute city is a thriving local economy, so people don't have to travel everywhere to work or shop. And that's what they're trying to do here. A few of the businesses have been given a helping hand by an organisation called Semaest.
So it's a public organization who is trying to help to revitalize a local shop, so empty shop, vacant shop, and they are developing business with positive for the city, so like a bookshop or a boulangerie or chocolate maker, and they really try to help them to install their business. So for example, they're helping them with the rent for 6 months.
And what's the overall thinking? What are they hoping it's going to try and do to the neighbourhood?
So I think for a street like this one, where there was a lack of amenities, there was a lack of commerce, there was a lack of essential services in the neighborhood. So the idea is really to install new retails, new commerce who bring life, I would say, in the neighborhood and make what we like in city possible.
Yeah, and presumably also it's good for the economy and good for jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's also about creating local jobs. So for example, this organization help craftsmen, for example, people like the one we are in front of them.
The rather nice craft of the chocolate maker, yes.
So they not just sell the chocolate, they do it here.
Great. Well, as I rather like the look of this chocolatier, let's go in and talk to the owner, Florian Mézère.
Bonjour, you must be Florian.
Yes, I am.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. It's a lovely shop you have here.
Yeah, thank you.
After sampling some of his products, I asked Florian why Semaest wanted to help him set up a chocolate shop here.
The area is changing, and it was not chocolate shop around, so it's exactly their mission, diversities of business. So we have a bakery, we have a butchery, we have a lot of different shops, but not a chocolate shop. And I was really looking to open a chocolate shop in this area because I've been living in this area as well. And people around, they were looking for chocolate shop. They were expecting chocolate shop. So it was perfect.
And they found it now. And so it's been a success, has it, for you and for the neighborhood?
To be honest, 100% sure. We are like too busy. For Christmas and Easter, for example, we cannot respond to the demand. So we have opened a second laboratory downstairs in the basement because here it was too small to produce like enough for the shop.
Semaest say they've helped over 600 local businesses to get started, and that's created more than 1,700 jobs. Florian is clearly providing a need that means people don't have to travel to get fancy chocolates. But he hadn't actually heard of the 15-minute city, or that he was part of creating it. So what did he make of it?
It is a right concept, because if you need to get the subway just to buy meat or to buy bread, whatever, this is very complicated. So if you can find everything you need in your area, it's just perfect. And we have like people from around. Our customers, I think like 90% of them, they're like from the area.
Reluctantly leaving the chocolate shop behind, Ellen and I went down the road to look at another example of the 15-minute city in action. If everyone's going to spend a lot more time locally, then it's got to be a pleasant environment. And the best people to decide what the area needs are the residents themselves. So Paris has a way for them to get involved.
So yeah, the idea is that the city dedicated 10% of their budget for projects that are proposed by the people and then voted and selected by the people. So every Parisian is free to propose one project. It can be a very small project to something